essentially allow busy GCs to do more with less by our tech-enabled platform. We find and help place flexible remote support, everything from commercial contracting to legal ops professionals. I'm super excited about today's discussion, and I wanted to introduce our moderator for today. Charlotte Smith is a mentor in this space, so it's going to be a phenomenal discussion. She's the founder of Level 7 Legal and works with GCs, CLOs, and legal ops leaders to transform their legal teams into high-performing legal departments. Without further ado, though, Charlotte, I'm going to turn it over to you to introduce our phenomenal panelists.
Hello, and thank you, Lauren. Thanks for that introduction. So panelists, if you want to start by sharing who you are, where you work, and perhaps some details around the size of your team. Laura, do you want to start?
Sure, yeah. I'm currently at Worksome. I believe I'm in my 6th week. So I recently joined. I am a senior director, but am taking over the GC role while he's on paternity until August, and he's giving me free reign to do whatever I want. So I'm excited about stepping into the GC role at Worksome. Previous to that, I was at Unity, where I led a bunch of different teams on a larger scale. Worksome is a scale-up, so it is a smaller company. And there are 2 of us in the legal team, which is a big change coming from a legal team of about 65. I am American and based in Copenhagen.
Amazing. John, do you want to go next?
Sure. My name is John Pingel. I'm the general counsel at Unison. We make what we call residential equity investments, allow homeowners to take advantage of the equity in their house without taking on debt, make investments, and then share in a change in value from that day going forward. And we do, on one half of the company, we do that. The other half of the company, we raise investment funds from institutional investors that then we use to make those investments with. I manage a team of 5 including myself, 4 lawyers, and 1 additional compliance team member. Our company is around 120 total.
Okay, thank you. And Jacqueline.
Thank you. And you can call me Jackie. My name is Jacqueline Lee. I'm Vice President, General Counsel at Flynn Restaurant Group. Flynn is the largest restaurant franchisee in the country. We own and operate 2,300 restaurants across 44 different states and employ 73,000 employees. We're also the 3rd largest restaurant operator in the country, right behind Starbucks and Chipotle, and operate in 6 different brands. Your favorite brands like Applebee's, Taco Bell, Panera, Wendy's, Pizza Hut, and Arby's. I've been with the company for almost 5 years now, started in the Associate General Counsel litigation role. When I was elevated into this role 1 year into my tenure at Flynn, we had 2 attorneys. Now we have just added our 10th attorney and have 2 legal professionals on staff.
Wow, so we have some really impressive panelists here today. And today we are going to be focusing on how in-house legal can become better leaders. Yet leadership isn't always something that is taught. It's more of a mindset. So I'm curious to hear, Jacqueline, what does leadership mean to you?
I heard a great quote about leadership just recently when I was in New York at the American Lawyer Industry Awards, listening to one of the recipients of the Lifetime Achievement Award. And the quote he shared was, your title is what makes you a manager. It's your people that make you a leader. And I thought that that was such a great quote because it's so true. A leadership mindset is really all about your people and how you are going to bring the best out of them, make sure that they're in the right positions, that they have the tools they need to succeed, that you're coaching them, developing them. When I think about, the amount of time I spend thinking about my team and, supporting them and making sure they're in the right roles and have what they need to accomplish all the goals that they have set out, I spend hours and hours thinking about my team, like even when I'm not at my desk. And I think it's one of the things that has made us successful in building a team from 2 lawyers to 10 lawyers, and, you know, developing a reputation with our client of being a great team together. It's just that people focus.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Laura, curious to hear your perspective on this.
I definitely echo the same sentiments as Jacqueline. I sort of see it again as, I guess, 2 different forms, right? Leading the legal team. So that'd be everything that she just spoke about, including something that I feel is very important is setting either the vision or mission for your team and ensuring that team members understand how their position rolls up into that greater mission so they have a purpose. And then the second piece would really be about leading the legal function within the company. And I look at that as branding the legal department. How are you interacting with the rest of the organization, and how are you leading, setting again the vision, goals for certain topics that are within your purview.
Yeah, vision is incredibly important because we need to know where we're going. And there's lots of moving parts there, sounds like. John, curious to hear your perspective.
Yeah, I think when we talk about lawyers being leaders, it's a transition from, you know, as a lawyer, especially moving in-house, the first thing that you find is there's a lot of, I think everyone knows the term firefighting. Like, there's issues that come up. How do you put out those fires on a day-to-day basis? That's important work. But then moving into being a leader is, I think you need to be able to take a step back from that and seeing what you're actually trying to achieve. And on a longer term, how do you move beyond the day-to-day? I love the way Jacqueline phrased it, of it being all about your team, because that's really where you, I think, see the ability to gain the space to do that, or find the space to do that. One of the key things is, especially working in-house, is to really understand the business and what the company priorities are. I mean, that's the baseline to being competent, I think, as an in-house lawyer. But then putting those through the lens of what they mean for legal. I mean, it's really a translation exercise, it feels like it sometimes. But then communicating those goals clearly to your team. And that's concretely different from firefighting. It's analyze, rather than, you know, what came up that day, it's analyzing and establishing priorities and goals, and then communicating them in a way that you're influencing other people to carry out their jobs. And that's the key piece for lawyers in particular, moving from that firefighting to the answering the right questions, finding priorities, and communicating in those in a way that you're influencing others to act effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the biggest challenges that I see lawyers working with, is that moving from being reactive to responsive and strategic. So you talked about in your answer, you know, shifting from that big law private practice lens to assuming the role of leader, perhaps moving in-house. I'd love to hear your experience of that, John.
Yeah, sure. So I started I started my career at Reed Smith, spent time in in litigation practice, and pivoted into transactional work for a few years. Was lucky enough to be able to make that change fairly late in my career as an associate. So I figured, okay, I can come in-house as a generalist, and you know, done enough of the 2 sides of transactional and litigation to know my way around. The thing that I found is, you know, first, it's really important that once you come in-house, to start establishing relationships are really key. You know, every company sort of works differently, but building those relationships with the business teams, understanding, asking questions of what we're doing and why we're doing it and how the company works, and starting to create a collaborative and supportive environment. Those are so key. And so, you know, you start by putting out the fires, then you understand what the business is actually trying to do. One, I think, key point of this is it's starting to, around that transition from working at a law firm to coming in-house. A thing that I don't know if I forgot it, I might not have been aware of it, is that lawyers can be intimidating to non-lawyers. And people will think, oh, the legal team's getting involved, like I've got have to act differently, or I'm in trouble. And in order to be a good leader and be effective, you need to be able to be involved in what's going on, and having actual relationships where people understand that you understand the business and you're asking questions not because they're in trouble or because you only see problems, but because you actually want to know how things are going on, or how things work and what the company's priorities are. That's a really important shift in mindset, moving from a law firm to working at a company, that I don't think can be overemphasized.
Yeah. Jackie, curious, of your experience.
Yeah, it's I think a huge difference moving from working at the law firm to coming in-house is that when you're in-house, you're expected to act like an owner. So one of the things that I think that you see, like, common sort of criticisms of outside counsel, which is relatable as having been outside counsel, is when they're asked for their advice, they give you options, but not a recommendation, because they're either A, they don't understand your objectives well enough to make a recommendation, or B, they don't have any skin in the game and they don't want to have any skin in the game. So they don't want to commit you to a certain path and then be responsible for the outcome. That's not an acceptable way to operate as an in-house attorney. Like, you have to own it. It's one of the core values of our company, is for each individual at the company to own it, act like an owner of the company. And so when you're giving legal advice to your clients, you're doing so as someone who's a custodian of the business. You're doing so as someone that has skin in the game and you want the business to succeed. So you do, to John's point, really need to understand your company's objectives. You need to understand their risk tolerance, and the impact that your advice is going to have on it. And then, pick a lane, right? Like, if this was your business, which it is, what's your advice? And I think that's a huge change from the way most outside counsel operate to when they come in-house. I think there are, a number of very talented outside counsel that do understand that, and those are the ones that we hire.
Yeah. Laura,
actually,
go on.
And Jacqueline, you made the point of when you're giving legal advice in-house. It occurred to me, sometimes I feel like there is no purely legal advice anymore, right? It's all a business recommendation. And this is what you're saying, no one cares what the law is. You need, okay, well, what's that mean for us? What's the recommendation on it? It's a huge change, right?
Completely. Exactly. Save the memos. Like, I do love a good memo still from our outside counsel. I would never forward that onto my business. I'm responsible for knowing the law. My business clients and business partners, they don't actually care what the law is. They're trusting me to know it and then guide them in the right direction based on where they want to take the business.
Right. So let's talk about leadership style. What kind of leader do you want to be, and how much attention do you give to it? Laura, we'd love to hear from you.
I think sort of just interestingly, to jump real back to the previous question, I've been in-house for so long that I think I forget what it's like to be an outside counsel. So I kind of operate right in this space where I've recently also found that I like to call myself a business enabler. Right. So I'm there to empower and enable the business. And I'm in this new role actually already noticing and working with the business, right, that they're seeing a little bit of a difference. And I think a little bit maybe shocked by some of my responses, because it's like, okay, here's the law. Here's our objectives. How do we bring these two things together so then the business can move forward? And I think that's what I love about being in-house counsel, is really you were an integral part of the business and in empowering and enabling them. But as for leadership, I joined Worksome because some of the values that they have are values that I have for myself and leadership. And a large part of that is around trust and transparency. So I think you need to have a foundational layer of trust built with your team, and then you can build everything on top of that. And for me, building trust is about being completely transparent about the business and then also about myself. So if you're working with me, I might overshare about my life, my thoughts, or what's going on. But I found that that's also helpful for team members, right? To give additional context and background and inform them, okay, like, here's my decision, but here's all the information that I had that actually led up to making this decision. Or, also, if I'm having a hard day or something's not going well, I will also let them know that. And I guess for the last 3 years, most of my team members have not been in my location. I haven't met some of the team members still. So there's an additional layer of building that trust virtually across time zones. And so I think it's really being authentic and also being vulnerable. And then I guess the last one would be leading by example. So I think something that's really important to me is taking vacation time, not working crazy hours, making sure you don't get burned out. And so I need to lead by example and also empower my team. So give them the permission to take vacation, encourage them to take vacation. If I see that they're working on the weekends, I'll ask them about that and try to find out some more information. Why? Because that's probably a failure on my part rather than a failure of them, because their work-life balance is a little bit out of whack. So it's really, I think, like trust and leading by example would probably be the summary.
Yeah, I love that answer. And it's really that human first, people first approach that comes with your leadership style. Jackie, curious to hear your perspective.
Very similar to, I think, the points that Laura made. It's really the longer that you're in a leadership position, I think the more you notice how and become aware of how closely your team is watching you, which is why leading by example becomes so important. So one thing that's very important to me, I was very lucky to have grown up in the law firm with exceptional leaders who are not only very, very talented lawyers, but really great human beings. They always showed appreciation, which is not a trait I think people would normally associate with like big law lawyers showing appreciation. I certainly worked with my share of lawyers who did not show appreciation, but the ones that I work with most closely did. And to me, it's so motivating to a team to be seen and recognized for your contribution. So it's something that I take very seriously and make sure that I take the time, not only with the legal team, but the folks that we work with cross-functionally to recognize them, not only like on one-on-ones, but in a public setting to their supervisor, to their peers. And what really made me happy to see, we have on Fridays when we have our full team meetings, we do wins of the week. And one thing I noticed that the team started to do was when someone said, it's been a hard week, I don't know that I had any wins, other people on the team would say, actually, I noticed that you had this win this week, and thank you very much for helping. Like, that's the kind of culture that I want to develop as a leader. And I think by demonstrating that, whether it's by publicly acknowledging someone on the team for doing a great job or doing so to another team member cross-functionally, I think they recognize that that's something that I value. And so I've seen that behavior proliferate in my team.
Yeah, I love that. And leadership style, it really does have to be consciously cultivated. And that goes for the culture in the team as well. That's what I'm really, really hearing. John, what's your experience of cultivating culture in teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think the three of us sound like we may be quite similar in this area, although with our own nuances, of course. One of the biggest things to me for anybody on my team is having a supportive environment where if you make a mistake, I want people to be empowered. Something I consciously still working on as a leader is letting go and making sure that people can own their own things. But I want people to feel comfortable telling me if there's a mistake. It's amazing how I think there's very few things you really can't fix if you know about them early on. But the worst thing that can happen is that things get hidden and swept under the rug, and they become a problem later on. So that's key to me, is having a supportive team where everyone works together, is happy to pitch in with each other. And then a key part of having people feel empowered is feeling like it's okay to, if something does go wrong, we can fix it. And that's a key part of people being willing to take on ownership themselves. And that's like, I think the I won't call it ironic, but the counterintuitive, to me at least, aspect of a lot of what we're talking about is the more I find, the more that I can let go, the better the result that other people do, and actually the more that I can get done. But it's that letting go in the first place, and having a team that feels supported to be able to move forward actually makes my life easier, even though it's hard to do that in the first place.
Right. We've got some great questions in the comments. Do you all do one-to-ones with your team members? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's key.
It's key.
I'll also add that for the folks that don't report directly to me, which has changed over time, it used to be everybody reported to me, and then we got larger and that wasn't really sustainable. I also hold skip level meetings with them as well.
Yeah, but really having the lines of communication open is incredibly important. How do you set the mission for your team? That's a question in the comments.
I'm happy to share our
Yeah.
mission. So our mission as a legal department is to provide exceptional service, superior results at a better value than outside counsel. And a lot of that mission, aside from like being like fairly easy to remember and snappy, which is always important for a mission to be able to articulate it, is that it really ties into what's important both to our clients. When I shared that mission with our chief operating officer, like he was actually really excited to hear that, because it rang true for him. He does want exceptional service. We're in the restaurant business, like that obviously resonates. He does want superior results, and he wants it to be.
Oh, we've lost her there a little bit. While Jackie comes back, Laura, do you want to? Oh, sorry, it put out there. But,
oh, I'm seeing that my internet connection is unstable. I apologize. I think I was sharing about the mission. It resonates both with the client, but then resonates with the kinds of behaviors that I want to see out of our team members. So I know like a lot of in-house lawyers don't like to use the term client to refer to their business partners or their clients. To me, I actually prefer that terminology, because it reminds my team that they are the client, and that your job is to provide exceptional support. So you may not agree always with the direction, but your job is to provide exceptional service. I'll wrap up there just to make sure.
Well, what I'm hearing you say is that your mission statement has been carefully cultivated, every word selected, and it extends to the branding of the team. And we've heard a lot about that this morning. I would love to hear all of your views on the importance of cultivating the team's image and personal branding of legal in the wider organization. Laura, do you want to speak to that?
Yeah, this is something that I'm definitely passionate about. I'm also part of another legal community called the Openly Legal Community, and I wrote a 5-part series on legal branding that also gave very practical tips about all the different ways that you could come up with your mission statements. And a lot of it is, I think, aligning it with your company's purpose and their mission and vision statement, as was demonstrated earlier. I think brand is just so key, because I think John said, earlier, a lot of people actually are intimidated by us, or they have a perception of what a lawyer is, what we do. Working in tech and startups and with a lot of young people, I'm also finding out that they really might not have any clue actually what we do. So first is humanizing yourself, letting them know that you're available. So that's being involved. That's doing part of like Secret Santa, going to Friday bars or any of those kind of events. And then second is educating. And so I'm actually trying to find different ways that I can squeeze in legal education. And as part of that, right, as I'm presenting, that's also communicating my brand, and I'm cultivating a feeling in my users or clients, depending on what word or terminology you want to use. And so that's what I'm looking at. So even one of the things that I'm trying to get put into our all hands that happens every week, I'm calling it microdosing legal. To try, we need to do some education, like basic education about what is our function, what do we do, what don't we do, how can we help you, and then also just some basic education around different legal topics for compliance purposes. And so it's finding little ways, creative ways or fun ways that you can interact with the business. I'm also working on a project where we're infusing the Worksome brand and values into a lot of our legal documentation. Some of it I found was a little, unfriendly when I was reading it. And part of the Worksome culture is about being awesome and having fun. And so how do you infuse that into your legal documents and your presentations and everything that you do, so then people actually want to spend time with you, are excited to come and be with you and learn.
I love that so much. You are a master of culture creation. Actually, there's a really great question in the comments. My team seems to be scared to challenge other business teams. Anyone else struggle with this when it comes to the branding issue?
Challenge is an interesting word there. I think I would want to understand a little bit more about what that actually means. I think that there's a way of asking questions and trying to understand what's going on. But this is actually makes me want to take a step back. I feel like if your team's ending up in a situation where you're in like a confrontation, like a challenge, the problem isn't there. The problem is like weeks before that, months before that, where actually this goes to kind of the cultivating the image within the wider company. To the previous question, the way that I would think about that is it's important for the legal team to be what I would call influential within the company, but what I mean by that is that you're involved in the company. You can get pulled in early and being seen as a collaborator, and you want to be, not necessarily say you're in the room, but you want to be in the conversation when ideas are starting, so that the earlier you can be involved in a decision-making process or a new issue that's come up, you can guide some of the early thinking in a way that you can start moving in a direction that's more tenable, so you don't get to the end where it's a decision and say we can't do that, because then you're the team of no, and that's like the most classic thing you always hear about in-house lawyers, right? You want to be like an enabling team, not a team of no. You don't want to be a hurdle that you have to get over at the end. But the key to doing that is being part of the process along the way. And the key to doing that, or a way to do that, is to be involved in earlier conversations, ask questions about how the business is working, being seen as someone you can sound ideas off of, or there's this issue that came up. But it's about being involved in an earlier state, and it's a longer term thing to do, but it's very, very tricky if you're in the end and it's a confrontation. It's you can't do this because X or Y. If you do find yourself in a situation though, even later on, I think a key around that though is an in-house legal department is very rarely in the position to actually say like a hard no, or like that's using a lot of capital, right? But the other way to approach that is saying, well, if we do that, here's what's likely to happen. Or as if we take this, it's a way to mitigate some of that risk that'll happen. And then you're viewing it more from, it's not a gate, your team, it's not the legal team as the gatekeeper, it's the legal team as a way of saying that if you do this thing, the outcome won't be a surprise. You know what you're getting involved in. But the bigger picture to that is you have to try to be involved in an much earlier time. And the way to do that is being curious about the business and building relationships and friendships, frankly, with the teams far earlier than that.
I think that's a brilliant answer. Any of you two want to add to that?
You know, as far as branding, sort of an amalgamation of what Laura and John were saying, what comes to mind is that quote, people won't remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. I think that is like essential to branding, right? You are doing your job effectively as an in-house lawyer if the way that you make your clients feel is relieved or confident or proud of the results. The way you don't want to make them feel is judged or annoyed or condescended to, which are all like very common feelings I think that clients have in poor lawyer-client interactions. And one of the best things that I did early on with my tenure at Flynn, and it's something that the company did with all of its employees that first started at the company, is a day in the life in one of our restaurants. And we work the front of the house and we work the back of the house. And what's so valuable about that experience is that you understand what are the objectives of the people running the restaurant, what are the obstacles that they face in running the restaurant. And it makes it so much more clear when you run into something that happened in the restaurant where, without that context, you would say, like, I thought it was pretty clear that the rule is to do X, Y, and Z. Why didn't X, Y, and Z occur? Having been in the restaurant context, understanding what the priorities are and the, challenges are, you have a much better understanding of why something might not have happened and what is a more likely way to get it to happen in the future. What are better ways to motivate your clients to want to work with you? And then it takes away a lot of that sort of judgment that lawyers can have when they're interacting with clients when they don't actually understand the business or the challenges or their objectives or what motivates them.
I love that that's a real kind of practical, tangible example. Soft skills are just so important for lawyers, and we can develop them. And I know early in the career it's heavily kind of academically focused, but as we kind of shift into managerial leadership roles, like, it's incredibly important to have those soft skills, is really what I'm taking from this. So let me see. There's a few more questions now that I'll read out from the chat.
Can I just add real quick on that?
Yeah,
one of the ways, Jackie, that I would offer too, that's like how you make people feel, is I just want to throw in there empowered. Like if you like business teams, if you can say, okay, like you want to do this, like if you do A, B might happen. If you do C, D might happen. And there's nothing that the business owner loves more than to be able to say, I'm taking this educated risk because I'm the one making this decision. And if you can, and by offering that, the best thing is when you walk into another meeting and you hear someone else, the business person you just talked to, basically making your argument for you, saying like, here's the risk I know we're taking, but I'm doing this consciously. And all of a sudden it moves from like it moves to making that person feel empowered and more confident. And just, I think it fits in exactly Jackie's point.
Yeah, I love that. Empowered is the perfect word. So how do you have difficult conversations when it's necessary? How do you do that as a leader? Laura, do you want to take that?
Yeah, that's definitely a good question. I think there's probably difficult conversations on different levels, right? Are you speaking like with the business, let's say in the previous example about a challenge or risk, or when you're actually working with your team? And the format that I followed, I actually took from Unity's leadership course, which was really great. And it just makes it very simple and very concrete. So the first thing you do is you ask for that person's permission. You know, are they in a good headspace to receive that feedback? Can I give you feedback on X? I don't know, the conversation that we just had, or how you spoke in that meeting, or, you know, whatever you want to give them, but make sure that you get their permission. And then next is a concrete example, right? It has to be something tangible. We're not saying, I don't know, right? Like, I noticed you've been lazy, or something very judgmental and very vague, right? Like, it needs to be a specific incident or example that you can point to. And then, you know, I noticed blah, 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 you know, this impacted me, or it looked like it impacted this person in whatever way, right? So what's the action? What's the impact? And the next is the so what. So, you know, and that so what is for you to approach it with curiosity. You know, like, I'm wondering what led to you making that statement. You know, what was going on in your mind? What were you thinking about? So you're really taking judgment out of that and trying to make it as clinical and factual as you can, because here's the action, here's the consequence, you know, here's the impact. Can you tell me more about, you know, your thinking behind that? And then asking a lot of open-ended questions and using active listening without judgment, so that they feel safe. And, you know, in most of those conversations, you'll get something that you didn't even think about, you know, in return, about why that person said that or why that occurred. And then once you get that other information, then you can address what is really going on. I think I go back to, I took a mediation class actually in law school, and they used an example of a husband and wife fighting over the husband not putting the toothpaste cap back on the toothpaste. And it, you know, the fight is not about the toothpaste cap. It's everything else around it and everything else underneath going on. And so when you're having difficult conversations, I think it's trying to get to what is really underneath, or what's motivating that behavior.
Yeah. And I think having that real understanding of that as well is, yeah. Jackie, John, anything to add to that?
The only thing I think I would add to that, and that was such a great sort of walk through what a difficult conversation that's well managed looks like. I approach difficult conversations like a litigator. I do a lot of like thinking and preparing for difficult conversations. And part of that preparation is knowing that difficult conversations typically produce a very like visceral emotional reaction from the participants in the conversation, not only like the person that's like that you're planning to speak to, but probably yourself. There's probably some like anxiety there or other underlying emotion. And so part of the preparation for me is to try to identify and anticipate the different kinds of emotions and why they might produce certain responses, so that I can prepare appropriate responses that are not necessarily all spontaneous, like some spontaneous responses that are like authentic are necessary to have like good, productive, difficult conversations. But I also think that it would be careless to just go in without like a plan and understanding of what the emotional response will be, because if you don't have a satisfying response to a very like an emotional response that could be anticipated, it just appears thoughtless and you know, doesn't respect the other person's reaction. So a lot of my preparation zeroes in on what kind of emotional response that might be triggered and how I can appropriately respond in the moment to those kinds of emotions.
And I think that's an incredibly important insight. Human beings, data performance science shows it. When we're in our stress reaction, our responses can look entirely different than you know, if we're in a different state of being. And so when we are in busy working environments, stress can really impact how someone responds during difficult conversations. John, anything to add to that?
Those are two great. I mean, I think Laura's framework around giving critical feedback, you know, especially like in the moment or shortly thereafter, is really important. The only thing I would add to Jackie's response is I found for myself, just in a situation where it's a difficult conversation, you know, I have this funny mix of myself. I know that I'm fairly conflict adverse by nature, but I also realize I've gotten feedback enough to know that I can make people feel like I'm interrogating them without intending to. And so I actually just think like some of the best conversations I've had are ones that's opening with acknowledging this is an awkward conversation for me to bring up. Here's what's on my mind. And I think that, this acknowledging the human element of it, because it goes a long ways to unarming or disarming isn't necessarily like, a strategic attempt, but it just makes those conversations open easier and tends to adding that acknowledgement of my own feelings in it too. Yeah, it has led to positive results as well. One thing I'd add.
So we've talked about branding of legal, and now we have a really great question that kind of feeds into the difficult conversations. Curious about what concrete steps the panelists have taken to foster relationships and build up equity with business leaders.
One of the things that comes to mind is it again sort of focuses on this idea of the client as client. I tend, when folks come to us for advice, to help them get to the right result and then step back. Like they don't need their bosses or their partners to know that they're making this decision because legal gave them good advice. And so I think I've seen in different legal departments, legal being very territorial about, their role in getting to a particular result. And I have found that we have gotten actually much more recognition and much better results when we sort of help people get to the result, let them shine, and then we find that they spontaneously recognize legal as opposed to legal trying to take the spotlight or take credit for things. It's really, the results sort of speak for themselves, and it's really my job to help shine light on my team when appropriate, but it's never been one of our metrics or something that folks on the team are rewarded for when they take credit in a way that wouldn't reflect well on our business partners. Like make them look good, right? That was a tip that I got as an associate at the firm, is like, your job is to make the senior associate, when she's up for partner, look good this year. That's your job. So that's always been what I've taken when I think about the clients I serve, is like, your job is to make them look good by helping them make informed, healthy decisions for the business.
Yeah, and it's that kind of humble leadership style that's incorporated in that. I love that. Laura, thoughts on that, the tips?
I completely agree with that, and would add, especially working in tech, I think it's very important, and this was mentioned before, but understanding and knowing the business. And for me, that means sitting down with developers and engineers and understanding what they're doing. And that means asking a lot of questions and being very vulnerable and really showing your ignorance around certain topics. But I found that, especially developers, engineers that are working towards building something, they're really excited about what they're doing. And so if you're taking the time to sit with them and ask them about it and actually try to learn, they're super excited to teach you. And then, they'll come to you proactively because you've taken an interest in what they're doing. And then later on down the line, when there is a legal issue or question, that product inside and out, how it's built, how it's supposed to function, you understand the development process, so then you can customize solutions for those teams. So whenever I'm providing advice or we're trying to provide a solution, it's not forcing them to do anything, it's working with them and getting embedded into their systems to empower them, again, to come to those solutions. But sometimes that will require, especially in technology, legal counsel to be vulnerable and to show that they have no idea, what is going on, to explain acronyms. And so I think that's probably a key learning, is really opening yourself up and showing that you want to learn, and the business is usually very receptive to that.
Yeah, I love that. John?
Yeah, I think it's just a big part of it is getting to know people as humans. I mean, to foster relationships. I mean, especially if you have a new person who joined the team who you've been working with a lot, or you're taking over a new department, like go to lunch with someone. Better yet, get your company to pay for the lunch. Like it's important. I mean, these things are so simple, but we're all humans and we're all working on the same team. And I think that's one of the really important differences around this, being an in-house lawyer and a leader in your team, is we're all building teams. And I just realized that this question was from Ariana Goodell, who I used to work with. Hi, Ariana, at Reed Smith. But I think, the idea of building up equity, I think that sounds like, I don't think it was the intent, but it almost sounds transactional to me. It's like you build up equity so that you can cash it in when you need it. And it's like the beauty of working. One of the reasons I left a law firm is because I feel like over a long time, I wasn't working to build a thing. And I wanted to go somewhere where I felt like the work we were doing over the long term was building a thing together and being part of that. And you weren't just parachuting in and out of individual issues, which is kind of how I felt at a law firm, which is simple love, but it wasn't for me. And you have this, this whole, what's the phrase, like a rising tide raises all ships in harbor. Like make the people look good. I think that was Jackie's point of, that helps help empower the people, but like get to know people as humans. And you gain credibility by just being another person who's working on the problem and trying to solve it through the tools that we have as well. So I would foster relationships by getting to know people, spending time with them, asking questions about what they do, show genuine interest. People love talking about what they do, even if they seem like they're busy. People actually love that more than anything else. And then working together by empowering those people. But I think that's like, don't view it as a transactional, view it as building relationship.
Yeah. So you're all busy leaders. Let's hear a little more around how you manage your time and any kind of practical, tangible steps that you have in there. Jackie, let's go with you first.
I've got a to-do list that reminds me of like the key things. I mean, you've got your like email to-do list, but you've got to have your to-do list on the side. What happens is that the things that I have for like Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I end up like deleting the Monday and then putting Tuesday on top. And I mean, it's just a constant state of triage. What I have been trying to do, particularly this year, as my responsibilities within the organization, really as like a senior leader, not just as a legal department leader, have grown, is trying to prioritize better what I spend my time on. It's very easy to get sucked into like the doom scroll of email, because in many ways you get into this zone of accomplishment when you can tick off the easy emails first, and you see the like inbox getting smaller until it gets empty. But it often is not the best use of time for the most senior leader in the legal department. It's very tactical. It's not very strategic, but your advantage of being the most senior leader in the legal department with access to the most senior leaders in other departments in the C-suite is that you do have the benefit of that big picture. And that's what you should be using to benefit the organization, not focusing on the day-to-day practice management or the email triage. And so to support that, I have been very consciously trying to delegate things like email triage to my team, which has the dual effect of forcing me to spend my time more wisely, and also gives my team members not only like more responsibility for practice management, but also more visibility within the organization. I often become the person, in the past that folks all over the organization went to have their questions answered, no matter how big or small, because I was here, the longest. But that is not necessary. And it actually doesn't help my team who's trying to build their own relationships with the business. And so that has been something I've actually sat down and spoken with senior leaders within my team to say, like, I am making a very conscious decision to step away from things like email triage and day-to-day practice management. I need your help to do this. Are you up for this? Is this something that you want? And, not surprisingly, they say, yes, I would like that opportunity. And so that's something I've been very deliberately trying to move towards as a better way to manage my time and get the most value for the organization out of my time.
Yeah, I love that. And the importance of really delegating and being conscious around it and passing the keys to other individuals. Which, I've seen it before. Sometimes there is that like hesitancy to relinquish and delegate, because that can kind of diminish your role, or that's the kind of mindset, but that's not true. So yeah, Laura, curious on your thoughts on time management and any top tips that you can share with us.
Yes. First, definitely agree with all of that. And as I've come into my new role, I've really taken the approach of protecting my time, using my time strategically, and drawing from the law firm model of thinking about it in dollars, right? Or if you want to give perspective, at least to the business that you're working with, is this a good use of the company's money? They're paying me. Is this how they want to be, spending their money on these certain topics? Or, if you have there's 2 or 3 lawyers on a phone call, is that a good use of company resources? Probably not. One of them can handle it. So, delegating that and thinking of sort of every action that you're taking. Is this a good use of my time? Is this strategic? Is this something that I should be doing in my position? And with that is something that's very hard for me, but I'm getting much better at, is saying no and setting boundaries. So we don't want to be the department of no, but I think as you become a leader, especially moving up into leadership positions, you have to say no to certain things, because it's just, do you really need me there? Is that something you really want me spending my time on? Is that a priority for the company? And a lot of times it's not. And so it's working with the leadership, right? Setting the leadership, saying like, hey, I'm going to step away from this. I'm giving it to this person, or, we're removing legal from here because legal really shouldn't be involved here. And so communicating that to everyone with the explanation of, this is not a good use of my time. I need to spend my time on the company priorities, which are X, Y, and Z. So I'm stepping away and I'm saying no. And for me personally, it's been super hard to say no, because I come from a service mindset. I used to want to bend over backwards to help people. But that actually, I've seen it happen where that will actually lead to just sort of out of control, I don't know, like terrible consequences if the legal takes on too much and doesn't delegate, because then the business will rely on you for way too much and your team will end up getting burnt out by it.
Yeah. I think that was a really great example of the consequences, and also in there how to say no. John, do you have anything more to add to that?
Just around this idea of, what, I guess, meetings you take, although that sounds kind of self-aggrandizing to hear me say that out loud. But it's like, there's this in-house phenomenon that, or this phenomenon of moving from a law firm to in-house where your calendar gets filled up. Like, people can just put things on your calendar. At my company, it's a cultural thing, and before you know it, your day can be mostly filled with meetings. And to what Jackie was saying, and I think Laura as well, to a certain extent, of I've tried to recognize, okay, do I need to be in that? If they put me as well as someone else and a lawyer on my team, like, I don't necessarily need to attend that as well. And I've actually found, when these things where by not being there, it's like, then I'm not added to the next meeting and it's getting handled just fine, right? And recognizing that, hired these people for a reason. They could run it. You don't all need to be there. We can catch up, one-on-one later on in, 5 minutes max, what happened in that hour-long meeting. And that is making the whole team work more efficiently as well. Finding time to analyze, are you spending time with the right project problems? What Jackie and Laura both said. Jackie, I wanted to ask you though, you said that you've outsourced your email triaging. And I was curious what you meant by that. Like, is like almost you treat your team that if they're copied as well as you on an email, they need to handle it, not you, or like, it was almost
that's actually exactly it. So most of the email that comes to lawyers on our team comes in through a distribution list, legal@flynnrg.com, right? So it comes to legal, and previously I had been the one saying like, hey, person over here, can you handle this? Hey, person over here, can you handle this? Or responding to the email saying like, oh, this person will be handling this for you, as like a customer service, client service measure that I had adopted when I first came on, and there were only two of us. It was going to be one of the two of us doing it. Now I very expressly have said like, hey, person A, can you handle all of the email triage that relates to this subject matter? Person over here, leader of this group, can you handle the triage for this subject matter? And it has actually done wonders. It doesn't make the emails disappear from my inbox, but it eliminates the need, like the urgency I feel to have to review it to respond to it. So it can be something that's really just like at the end of the day, like shunting emails into their proper places, as opposed to feeling like there's this urgency that requires my attention instead of my attention being devoted on, a strategic project.
Yeah. So is it fair to think then that part of that is creating clarity within your team of who handles
That's exactly
lanes, like who handles what areas they come in? And I know this is mine. That thing comes in, that'll be Stevens or, whatever else.
That's it. Yeah. Cause I think the big driver for why it hadn't happened before is because I got to it so fast that people assumed that I wanted to continue doing it. And maybe like a tiny part of like the control freak in me did want to continue doing it, but it's not the best use of time. And so when I made clear, like, I am going to stop doing it, my expectation is that these emails are responded to within this time. Otherwise, I will feel compelled, from a client service perspective to intervene. And then them telling me like, I'm already reviewing it. And if I haven't responded within this period of time, it means that I have made a judgment call that it's not as important to get to as something else. Once we had that very express conversation, I have felt much more empowered to like step away from the email and like work on other things.
Yeah, so like that classic thing of like, by letting go, the result actually gets better.
Exactly. Yep.
And it's really hard to do, let go sometimes. It takes a lot of courage. So yeah, but the results are great. So I think that's us wrapping up. I know, I think Lauren is going to join us now.
I can add a thing to go to the other extreme versus with emails. I don't even manage my inbox, and someone asked me about an email today, and I was like, I don't know if someone else is handling it. And if you really need me, then you'll probably Slack me.
And is there a degree of anxiety there, or is that all gone? No,
I've delegated, made roles and responsibilities clear. Yeah.
Here I am, guys. Thank you so much, Charlotte, Jackie, John, Laura. That was one of the most tactical, candid conversations we've had in a very, very long time. I know our audience is leaving with a ton of informative insight and candid learnings here. So to our audience, if you really enjoyed this conversation, we're going to have another fantastic event coming up this Thursday with legal leaders from Jim Pass, Mars Wrigley, Bowery Farming, and Signified. We'll drop the link to RSVP to that one in the chat. Head on over there. Again, to our panelists and to Charlotte, thank you guys so much for the tactical information today, and we'll see everyone soon.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye, guys.